Hello, everyone. Welcome to another special live edition of Talking Comics. I'm your host, Julius Freeman. Now, tonight's episode, it's a very special one for me because it deals with two topics that are very near and dear to me. That's philosophy and comics. And I think my guest that I have on today will uh, provide a nice flavor to the conversation, and we're just going to go at it and talk about whether or not it's a good thing, a bad thing. Is it positive, a negative? Is it something that people like, or something that people tend to miss when they read a comic? Because there's a lot of philosophies within comics. And as you know, there's examples like, for instance, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Alan Moore is an environmentalist. So what did he do? He wrote the character as an environmentalist fighter, which made sense because it's Swamp Thing. He's a swamp, essentially. And then Animal Man, Grant Morrison's Animal Man, since Grant Morrison in real life is a vegan, he made Animal Man vegan. So these are the topics we're going to be talking about with my guest. But before I get him on here, I just wanted to give you guys a little brief history of the word philosophy. Because I know philosophy, depending on who you ask, it can be, it depends on like what kind of philosopher you are, right? So typically, growing up, when I used to go to college parties, when the person in the party would call himself a philosopher, of course, you'll get the guy like, oh, great, this guy's going to freaking run his mouth and talk about all this jibber jabber and try to impress the girls and whatnot. But there's also other elements to philosophy. And the elements that I personally adhere to is the wisdom part of it. So if you guys don't know, philosophy comes from the ancient word philosophia, which was coined by Pythagoras, the ancient philosopher of Italy, who did not like the title sage, because that was the title they gave him, and he didn't like that because sage kind of felt him like he was elevated and he wanted to remain equal amongst his peers or amongst his brethren of the world. So he coined the term philosophy, which came from two words, actually. Philo, which is love or lover or love of, and Sophia is wisdom. So essentially, philosophy or philosophia is lover or love of wisdom, which is, when you break it down like that, it's a very beautiful word when you think about it. Who doesn't love wisdom, right? So without further ado, my co-host for the night, this guy, I've been following him on Twitter for quite a while now. I love his posts. He always posts the most interesting things on Joey Akala. Thanks, buddy. Very wise. Thank you for joining the show and watching. And hopefully you learned something today, bud. But this guy is, he always posts interesting stuff, old paintings of, old historical things. And he has a book out called Kyrie, which is in demand on Indiegogo. We'll talk about it some more. So please, without further ado, please welcome Matt Crotts. How's it going, dude? How you doing?
Hey, yeah, appreciate it, Julius. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
And well, thanks for coming here, man. Thanks for being on the show and joining me in this wild ride that we're going to take. And then we could just start off with your book. Tell everyone about your book. Let me share the screen here so I can show everyone, and you can give a little brief description as to what your book's all about. And give me a second. Make sure I get the right screen here. And then we could just take it from there.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks. So this is Kyrie, Exiles in Wasteland. It's book 2. It's 156 pages. And book 1 is on there too. It's 128. And it's a romance of the sands, North African adventure set in the 3rd century Roman Empire. And it's kind of like a supernatural historical adventure. So a lot of weird, strange things happen where that world is historical in some senses, and yet in other ways it kind of fits what ancient people would probably expect of an adventure of this sort more than what we might. And and some really fun, exciting things happen. And it's just a lot of fun to draw, a lot of fun to explore. It's all the stuff that I enjoy talking about and reading about, writing about, drawing. just found a way to mash it all up into one kind of hybrid genre. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I just realized I just butchered the title of your book. How you
No,
pronounce
no.
it?
Everyone says Kyrie. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. Because when you say Kiri, I was like, oh crap, I mispronounced that.
No. It's fine.
So so tell me, what led you to write comics to begin with? What was it that kind of I guess was the spark that it made you go, you know what? I want to try this. I want to go for this. Not only am I going to go for this, I'm going to go for something that I want to do, something that I want to explore myself in the terms of the knowledge I've acquired over the years. So what was the moment that led you to go, you know what? I want to make a comic book.
Well, honestly, it was it's not the typical route. I think a lot of people, at least in our circles, tend to they got into comics early on as kids, and they got into it through the superhero genre usually. And for me, it was more. I did read some comics when I lived overseas for a bit. I read like Tintin and Asterix
cool.
and that sort of thing.
Yeah, cool.
And those were my first comics. And then I came back to the States, and they don't have there's no Tintin. There's
Right,
no
yeah. It's very rare to get Tintin in the States, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and there was no Amazon back then or anything like that. So it's, if your friends don't know about it, you ain't finding it at the local comic shop, that's for sure. So so comics just kind of died off for me. And I got really into film and concept art and that sort of thing kind of early on because I was a big Star Wars fan. And that's one of those properties where there's always these art books coming out in the 90s, like the making of, behind the scenes. Here's these paintings they're doing in the background. And you're realizing like there's a lot of artists involved to tell these stories. It's not just a guy with a camera. Like it's it's a team. It's a team project where there's these writers, there's these people who just are visual artists. Like everyone's kind of coming together and pitching their talents to make something that can't happen on its own, right? So, so I'm looking into that, and I'm like, I'm going to go be a storyboard artist. That's like these sequential images, and and it's writing, and it's all these kind of cool skills. It's about communication. It's not just drawing what you feel like, but you're trying to get a particular. You can actually tell if you're succeeding by how many people get what you're trying to do. It's like this really cool visual communication thing. And so I'm going to art school in college, and then suddenly people are showing me manga, and they're showing me anthology books. This is the early 2000s now. And there's a lot of these, there was kind of an anthology boom with Kazu Kibushi's Flight series. A lot of people were doing short stories and stuff like this.
That's
and
right.
So yeah, then I'm seeing like people they're jumping over into comics from storyboarding, from film and animation and all this, and they're showing like you can tell a really cool, compelling story in 12 pages, and it's a one-off, and you never see it again. But it maybe it changes your life, and that really excited me more than like I don't know. There's nothing wrong with like some people get excited about stories that go on for 80 years.
Right. Yeah.
And that's fine. But like for me, like I get excited when a story is just 12 pages and that's all you ever get. Like that's something really powerful to that. If you could just like pinprick someone with that kind of intensity, that's really cool. So I started trying to get into anthologies, and then that whole thing kind of died off because I think no one made any money with that. And then I tried to find people to collaborate with, like, hey, can you write me a story and I'll draw it? And then that fell off. So I just realized, you know what, I got to do it all. I gotta write, I gotta draw, and not growing up with the whole the bullpen approach. I didn't know any better to think like, oh, there has to be an inker and a penciler and a colorer and a letterer, and you gotta bring all those people together. I just did everything. So this is one person project. I'm halfway through telling the story. It's probably going to be another 280 pages before I'm done, and having a lot of fun. And 2021 is going to be fun. I'm working on book 3, and I have while I'm working on that, I'm commissioning in the spirit of the sort of stuff that really got me into comics. I'm getting some short stories put together that I've written and other artists are drawing for me in the Kyrie-verse. So a lot of fun things.
That is good. That sounds cool. And first of all, I'm jealous. I'm jealous that you're able to do it all, because I wish I could draw like that and write my own stuff. That's been my conundrum, approaching the comic book field, is that at some point in my life, I was like, okay, I know I can write comics. I'm confident enough in my ability to write a comic book story, because I've learned to lay out panels. That was the first thing I did when I started writing comics, was to lay out the panels first and then write the script, so that way I could have a visual as to how to, I guess, put into words the visual I laid on the page. And so as I did that, and I realized that the more I did it, the more I got a little better at it. The more I realized I wish I had the time to sit down and actually practice drawing, so I could just do it all myself. But I don't have the patience for it, and I don't have the time for it either, because now, since I have a little baby girl, that takes away a big chunk of your life. So
absolutely,
there is no way I could do it. So that's why I say, I'm jealous, because you're able to sit down and go, okay, what's the story, and then you can lay it down. And so that's great. That's awesome that you do. So all this is all you then, right? All the art that I'm looking at here is all you.
Yeah. It's
fantastic, man. Fantastic. Really.
Thanks.
Honestly, and I can see the Tintin influence here a little bit.
Yeah,
sure.
I never let go of that. I think that was ever since the early 2000s. Like, I think a lot of people, and probably the webcomic craze, contributed to that too, and people spilling over. And really early on, like the first year of Kickstarter, people in the webcomic sphere seizing Kickstarter with both hands, and seizing Indiegogo as soon as that dropped,
right.
And people coming from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of styles, from all over the world, just making it happen. That kind of taught me, like, comics doesn't, and this is something I think a lot of people in other countries do understand this, but comics don't have to look a certain way to be a comic. And in the US, we have it's changing. It's already changed. But until recently, I think a lot of people, just the peculiarities of the US market, where it's dominated by two companies operating in only one genre. Though that wasn't always the case, but by the 90s, it pretty much became that case. There became a generation of people that thought that comics has to look a certain way, has to work in one genre, or you're kind of missing the point, But it's not that way in Brazil. It's not that way in Canada. It's not that way in Japan or Europe, So it's kind of nice. We're actually people are weirded out. Speaking of, I don't know, this probably fits into your philosophy idea, but comics here feel very chaotic right now, and they feel very decentralized. But I think that's actually what feels like a weird period in US comics is actually a return to what most people have experienced. I think it's becoming like what it already is and has been for many decades everywhere else in the world, where there's no one place you can look to understand what comics is. There's no one genre anymore, no one style,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that is a good segue to the topic at hand. When I mean like philosophy in comics, I'm not talking about just stories. I'm talking about approach to the medium. So, like you're right. In Europe, there's a respect for the medium. There's no, like you said, no one way of making comics. You just find your own style, and if you hit it, then you get the respect and the admiration that you deserve. So, like, for instance, the first person that comes to mind is Mobius. Mobius developed his own style, and it was a very unique style at the time. And he got a lot of notoriety, not just in Europe, but also here in the States, in the very hardcore part of the comic book culture. And so, you're right. Now we're seeing the end of corporate-owned comic books. They're destroying the corporations, the greedy corporations, right? They're destroying the one thing that was the one final remaining thing that belonged to the people, I guess, is the comic book industry. Because that was the last, for me anyway. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, I always felt that comic books were the last place where people can just go and make their own comics and find their own place in it. So, for instance, like Jeff Smith Bone, right? Jeff Smith's Bone is not a superhero comic, but everyone reveres that book because it's so well done, and he delivered it in a way where it was unique, it was cool, it was different, and he now Jeff Smith is a well-known name amongst the comic book readers. Well, at least I hope so, anyway. And then another one that comes to mind is another artist that I like, Andrew Tomine, who draws I can't remember the name of the book, but he draws, I think, for Drawn Quarterly. He also has his own style, unique style and whatnot. But yeah, I think you have a good point. Now with the crowdfunding, culture, I guess, that's kind of rising and taking the place of the big two and Image and all the other publishing houses, you're seeing a influx of indie creators trying to get their way in to find their place in this new marketplace, which is the crowdfunding marketplace, Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And as I see here, you raised over $9,000 for your campaign, and that's indicative that people are hungry for something new and different and unique. And
and I can't do anything but be grateful to that. So I guess I'm kind of caught. I mean, you're right. Like, because I'm realizing, I think a lot of people have realized, a lot of backers, a lot of readers, and other creators have realized that it's not the 90s anymore. It's not even the early 2000s anymore. There's kind of a new world, and people still respect the genre, not the genre, the medium. They still respect comics, but they don't. And you see this with a lot of other creators who grew up different from me, who grew up entirely on superhero stories, and their first foray, a lot of these people, from switching over from reader to creator, is making a non-superhero story. So there's something taking place where I think a lot of people are realizing that maybe there's a lot of amazing stories that they do cherish and that they've learned a lot from, but these are like archetypical. There's a framework there that's actually kind of that I don't know how, it's probably pretty universal, where you can take what you've learned from Spider-Man and you can apply that to a Western or something. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And that's exciting. Exactly, so I think people are open to that. And that's really cool.
I mean, a smart aleck cowboy. I mean, that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, I totally read that.
Yeah, someone who's just like Spider-Man, except without the web slinging and the fighting the rogue gallery, but they could still have that Spider-Man esque style of the wittiness that comes with Spider-Man. That's famous for Spider-Man anyway. I did that with my book too. With my own personal campaign. Let me pop it up here.
Yeah, let's see some Ghetto Dragon.
Yeah, Ghetto Dragon. Yeah. Ghetto Dragon is really Superman in the modern street level, I guess, because as I was writing the character, as I was writing the story, I realized, God, this guy is too perfect. This guy's too freaking perfect. He's kicking ass all the time, and of course, after a while, it gets boring. After a while, you get tired of Superman winning the day, right? You got to have the reader likes something that happened with the hero, so they could cheer for him. They could cheer him on. So I thought about it. I was okay. Well, what's Superman's weakness? Kryptonite and his friends and family. The one book that comes to mind is the Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, written by Alan Moore and drawn by not Dave Gibbons, Kurt Swain, I think, or Swan. Did you ever read that book? By the way?
No. But I've heard
highly
a lot
recommend
about it. Yeah.
But it's a great Superman story. It's one of the best Superman stories that I ever read, because it's the end of the old Golden Age Superman. It was right at the end of that, and they were about to start the John Byrne Superman run in the 80s when the Crisis of Infinity Earths was about to happen. So this was like the last love letter to that old, Superman that that I guess at the time the adults were read when they were kids.
Yeah.
So Alan Moore wrote that last 2 issues, and it really struck me as a teenager reading it, because in the story, all the villains that were kind of nuisance to him throughout his whole run, like Metallo and all these other Toyman and whatnot, they came back and started murdering his friends. Like it was like a very dark story. They were coming back and they weren't attacking him anymore. They were straight up murdering his friends in front of him. And there's a part in the story where the Toyman, the little toys, they kill Clark Kent on live television, but then of course his suit gets burned off and you find out he's Superman. So the world finds out he's Superman. And so he's no longer can use that identity. So there's a scene when he's in the funeral and he's talking to I think he's talking to either Lois, I can't remember, but that's what he says. He's like, these characters, these villains who are nuisance to me are not coming back. What happens when Lex Luthor comes back, or what happens when Parasite comes back? What are they gonna do? I would hate to imagine that. And I always felt like that's a good, that's another form of kryptonite for Superman, is going after his friends. And so with this story, the Ghetto Dragon, that's exactly what happens, is that they go after his family. So it's kind of like, oh, we can't beat you up because you're tough. Like you're actually legit tough. So we'll go after your family. And then that's where the story takes off. I'm not going to go into too much detail as to what happens after, but that's essentially what happens in this first few chapters of the story. Yeah, man, Ghetto Dragon is like you just said, it's a Superman street comic without the superhero alien crashing on Kansas stuff.
That's
but
beautiful.
yeah, let's see. This is a like you said, my own little take on the comics. I wanted to make a superhero comic, and I still want to make a superhero comic.
Sure,
but
nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Yeah, this story though was the one that kept poking at me, like kept telling me, hey, you got to get this out. You got to get this out. It kept bugging me. So finally I relented and I just got it all out there. And now I have it here on the campaign and I've met my goal. I just want to make a little bit more, so that way I could have a little bit more funds to produce all the goodies that I would love to produce for the contributors who do contribute to the campaign. But
yeah. I mean, you got some amazing art. I'm really
oh, thanks, man. Thanks.
Really
like I said,
jealous.
I wish I could draw it, but this one was drawn by Afu Chan. He did this little piece, but the artist is actually Alan Fletcher. He's an artist from he lives right now. I think he currently lives in Denmark, but he's from Great Britain. And he jumped on the project because he's a huge fan of Bruce Lee and he liked the story. So he jumped on and has given me some pretty great pages, fantastic looking pages. And book 2 is I hope book 2 does see light of day, because book 2 is going to be really freaking insane. Originally I wanted this to be a one whole book, but it didn't work out as I planned, so I had to split it into 2 books, and I think it has been a better approach to getting this book out there than rather than producing the whole book.
Yeah, so, like one issue, or how big's the book?
The book is about 60 pages. Things about
nice.
59 to 60 pages.
That's pretty beefy. That's a good option. What are your tiers? What do you got? What's your price?
So the tiers. Let's look at the tiers here. Let me scroll back up. So the first tier is a PDF copy, black and white, for $3. 6 people have claimed it. I know times are tough, and I know some people don't. They prefer the PDF for the most part, because then they'll check it out, and if they like the story, more than likely, hopefully, they get the physical copy later on. And the second tier is the black and white print copy. And then the third tier is the colored copy with the Kim Jacinto cover. That's right here. This cover, this beautiful cover here by Kim Jacinto.
It's really nice.
And these goodies here are if I get the $5,000 stretch goal. So if I reach 5,000, then the contributors and the people who back this will get these little goodies here, stickers, prints of this cover, and so on and so forth. And then the second one is a cover by Steven Seven, which is this beautiful cover here. I really love this cover. This cover really captured exactly what the story is. The back there is his family and some friends, and he's in the middle of it. He's trapped in an alleyway, and he has no other choice but to fight his way out. And that's essentially what the story is. He has to fight his way out to the other side. So you get that. That's the tier for that cover, and then these two tiers are if this second book here is all the short stories that I've produced over the years.
Oh, nice.
That I'm going to compile that never saw a light of day because, as you mentioned earlier, these shorts there was no money in it. So I produced all these shorts hoping, I'll just release this online for free and hopefully people will start reading it and noticing it, and I'll just continue producing these shorts, and then hopefully it'll get enough traction, and then I'll do a crowdfunding campaign. And it didn't work out the way I planned. So I made enough to be able to make a second book, a special edition type of deal where it's only available at this campaign. So once this campaign is done and it goes on in demand, these two tiers will disappear. So it's only available for this campaign. So it's a collector's item that these campaigners, whoever got these perks, will get. But yeah, once it goes in demand, I'm gonna say probably these three, including the PDF, will probably still be available in demand. So yeah, there's the Ghetto Dragon. My own little footprint in the comic book world is I want to kind of showcase, a different side of a hero's journey, and I hope I capture it with this story. And going back to the topic of philosophy and comics, this your story, Akiri. What's his story? What's that character's story? Is it someone who's looking for the truth? Someone who's searching for an emblem of some kind? What is it that drives the story in Akiri?
Well, there's 4 protagonists, and they are all. I take a. I don't know if you've heard of John Truby. He's kind of a screenwriter, story doctor type dude from Hollywood.
Yes, I do know who he is. Yes.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of his stuff, and so my philosophy with all the stories that I write, particularly with Kyrie, is that all the characters, protagonists and antagonists, they all have very serious wants. They're committed, single-minded to getting their wants fulfilled, but they have a need beneath that's ruining their lives. And so the plot way of telling the story is that there's a Roman death cult.
Nice.
There's like a cabal of the Roman elite who meet together and are working to piece together an ancient Egyptian ritual, and they need different components that have been flung across the ancient world, thanks to Alexander the Great getting in the middle of it about 600 years before this point in the story. So they're trying to piece together what Alexander did and what he did with the components of this ritual when he learned it and when he obtained particular artifacts. And if they can piece everything together, then they can unlock the gates of Hades. They can control who goes in and who goes out, and they can solidify this already waning, crumbling, declining empire, and they can make it an eternal empire that lasts. It's absolutely untouchable. They can put someone on the throne who never dies, and they can rule forever. So that's the goal. And and so there's a lot of people. There's people kind of like in a Star Wars approach, where there's a ragtag group of people who have no business being friends, would normally never hang out, but because of how the world is, and all these people on the outside are having to form an alliance and a truce of sorts in order to team up to stop this death cult before it's too late. And they don't know it, but each of them are going to have to be forced to face their deepest, darkest secrets and overcome the very thing that they're trying to run away from by chasing after these relics. They're going to have to stare them down in the face, and some will fail, and some will see to the other side of that challenge.
That's awesome. That sounds like a little bit of Indiana Jones mixed with Lord of the Rings type of deal, and I dig that. I'm hooked. Yeah, that's awesome, especially with the whole elements of the dark occult. You know, the Roman cult that's involved in it. I'm assuming the antagonist of the story. That's great, man. So what's your background in terms of research? Are you a historian major? Are you a student of history or philosophy, or are you I think I saw on your Twitter handle that you're a religious study. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's all a hobby for me, but I guess it's pretty serious hobby. Like, I almost went back to school to study history, and thankfully my wife talked me out of that and said, like, you need to find a way to just make that something you do on the weekends.
Right.
So I'm glad she did that. But yeah, I'm really into the Middle East. I'm into North Africa. I'm into just cultures that the more I read about, you know, just picking a culture. It's the neat thing about culture is that the more foreign and alien a culture might seem to you on first pass, you know, the more you get to know them, you'll find different aspects of you kind of reflected back at yourself in surprising ways where you can really relate. It's just it takes time, you know, and that's what's fun about ancient Rome. There's a lot of stuff that we think we have that's similar to them that oftentimes is actually kind of grotesque to our sensibilities. Some things that they took for granted, and then there's other things that actually make us maybe are uncomfortably close to what we're used to. So that's what's fun. And it's also a period, you know, there's a lot of places I'd like to take a story, but I don't know if people are as excited for those particular places, you know. So
right.
Everyone knows Rome. Everyone thinks they know Rome. So what if I just say, well, you think you know Rome, but do you know it from North Africa? So I can play that. You know,
yeah, no, I say do it. I say do it because people need to be exposed. People need to be exposed to the knowledge. You know, like for instance, you know, for a long time, I thought Europe was always controlled and ruled by the Normans, but then I learned about the 12th century period of Europe with the Moors, and and how, you know, the Muslim element, Islam, ruled Europe during that time. During, I think it was the beginning of the 4th century up until the 12th century, I believe. I may have the dates wrong there, but that fascinated me. I was like, what?
Yeah, like the south half of Italy and Sicily.
And absolutely.
A lot of Spain. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of there's a Arabian elements there, and like for myself, you know, I'm Mexican. My both my parents are Mexican, but when I follow my family line, I get dated back to Spain, and you know, there's been times in my life where people thought that I was Middle Eastern. They thought I was Persian. A lot of the time, people were like, "Hey, are you Persian?" Like,
sure.
You look Persian. I was like, "No, I'm not Persian." But as I looked into the history of Spain and ancient Europe around that time, I was like, that explains why. It's probably because they all, you know, mixed up in there at some point. And when the Moors did fall off, and then, you know, of course, the Normans came and took Europe back over, that's when I'm pretty sure the remaining elements of that old empire still remained. And now we have, you know, a bunch of mixed human beings running around.
Yeah, and what's a race anyway? Like,
right.
It's a cultural concept, I think. And if you're talking biology, everybody's mixed, you know?
Yeah.
It just depends on where you want to draw the line, I guess, how far back you want to go. That's what's cool about it, you know? And that's what I like about these sort of things too, is that it's all like, I like edge of empire stuff. I like that's probably why I talked about Western. Like, I like where there's like people think they understand what civilization is, but then it's here's the frontier version of that, where it's actually it's out on a line, on a border between what other people think civilization is, and things are mixing in comfortable and uncomfortable ways. And there's people taking advantage of that and making it into an opportunity. And there's people who are thinking that that's a threat, and all this kind of fun stuff that happens in those sort of stories. Those are really interesting, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. Not.
He's just going through my weird Twitter.
It's because look, I'm telling you, I really meant it when I said in the beginning of the show that I really do love your Twitter feed, because you always post the most interesting stuff. And I always want to comment on it, but then I was like, you can't really, converse with people on Twitter, because I would like to ask you, like, hey, what's the significance between these two pictures? I'm curious to know why you put them side by side, because this is a very interesting painting.
I have no idea.
Okay, you just did it because I'm just gonna do it because this painting, it's a freaking gnarly painting. Yeah, and I'm a fan of these kind of paintings too, because I always wonder, like, what was the painter thinking or feeling when they painted this? Like, what led them to paint this in the first place? And
I think it's the gates of hell, literally, right?
Is it because that's what I was thinking too, the gates of hell. But it's just, for me, it's like, how did someone just think of that? I don't know what year is this. Is it, what century is this? Do you know? Do you happen to know or no?
It looks like Hieronymus Bosch, and Bosch is 1300s.
Okay, so around
northern
century?
Europe.
12th century, around there. Okay, yeah, because this is freaking gnarly, man.
He's Dutch. Yeah,
and in this too, I know it's a set of a movie. Because I recognize this actor here. I don't recognize this guy, but I do recognize. Yeah,
Dances with Wolves.
This is what this is. Okay.
Yeah,
it's funny because I had this picture up when you're talking about the Wild West and the frontier and stuff, and you're right. This is like this, even though it's a movie, it's two actors on the set, but the symbolic part of it is that when the settlers were coming in, they're essentially spreading the civilization, right? The civilized part of America was spreading to the west. And so you had Native Americans who were living there who didn't want civilization because they were very happy living with nature, living with side by side with natural law. We live and survive alongside the wild animals, but they weren't wild people. They were just accustomed to their way of life, meaning they were happy with what they had, which was to them enough, because nature provides, right? Nature provides for all.
And I might even say, their view could be like, so long as we're putting words into Native Americans, I would say, like, they had their civilization, No,
you're right.
What's coming their way is the forces of chaos, in a way,
You're absolutely right.
The settlers are thinking of it probably the same way, just in reverse.
Right. Absolutely.
But I don't even know, like, what do you do with that? Like, this is what conflict in, oftentimes it's miscommunication. It's a natural, but, tragic sense of distrust in people that don't seem to be going your direction in life. I don't know. And I just like cool costumes,
Yeah, you're right. It's always I don't understand that, so therefore I fear it. Therefore, I don't like it. I want to destroy it, and vice versa. As opposed to going, well, let's try to understand how you're living and how I'm living. Is it right? Is it wrong? But that's a whole different topic for probably another show. So I don't want to get into it right now, because that is a very deep conversation, and I hope down the line we can have more of them, because I would love to talk about. I like talking about that kind of stuff. I'm never opposed to being closed off to exploring ideas that could be in these times taboo, or I guess quote unquote dangerous. That kind of deal. I'm not afraid of that, because knowledge, especially if you're a writer, or especially if you're an artist, in my personal opinion, artists shouldn't be afraid of knowledge. They should take as much as they can in, So that way, when they express themselves through their art, be it like, for you, writing and drawing, or for myself, writing, it comes out. It comes out in some form or fashion. So that way, the readers who do read the stuff will learn something and go, oh,
Mm-hmm.
wow, I never realized that. I never knew that this was the case for, like, for in your case, ancient Rome, or in my case, the ghetto streets of Orange County, that's
Mm-hmm.
run by a bunch of Latino, men who started a gang because for the most part they didn't have strong fathers in their homes. My older brother was
Yep.
an active gangster, a street gangster, and the reason why he became that is because he got no love from our dad and
Mm-hmm.
my stepdad. It was his father, but my stepdad. And the reason why I know that is because he told me that. Because I asked
Yeah,
him one day.
sure.
I asked him, when I got old enough, I said, "Hey, his name was Manny." I said, "Manny, why did you join a gang? I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Why? What made you want to do that?" And he told me it's because I was getting love from them.
Mm.
I wasn't getting love from
Mm.
my dad. I wasn't getting it here. When I went
Mm.
onto the street and I saw that they had my back when people picked on me, when I saw that they actually helped me out when they needed some money, I got love from them. And I wasn't getting it at the house, so that's why I did it. Because I had a sense of loyalty to them. And I was like, wow. But what about the other stuff? And he's like, hey, that comes with the game. That's what he told me. So
Yeah,
it's fair game. So that's why I'm hoping this is a nice little segue again for the philosophy part of it, within comics and within the stories. Now, do you think that's a good thing? Because I know nowadays, especially with the mainstream stuff, the Marvel and DC stuff, they have all this ideological stuff within their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you believe that that's a good thing or a bad thing? Should it be in the forefront, or should it be subtle, or does it depend on the situation? Does it depend on the I guess the times we live in? Because, for instance, like back in the civil rights era,
Mm-hmm.
you had total injustice at the time. We have historical data and footage and all this stuff about the horrible things that happened to the people of color during that time in America. And so, of course, you had content, you had artists expressing the anger, right, during that time. And of course, that led to blaxploitation movies, or like Melvin Van Peebles' movie Sweet Badass Song. That it led to those kind of movies that
Mm-hmm.
kind of empowered people who were disempowered. So do you think
Absolutely.
today in this time is it, I guess what I'm trying to get at is it justified, I guess, for it to be on the forefront, or is it too much too soon, too fast? What do you
Oh
think?
man,
What are your
you're gonna
thoughts
get
on
me in
that?
trouble. You're gonna get me in trouble.
Hey, this is open forum, my friend. There is no getting in trouble here. You could speak your mind. It's not a problem, because everyone has an opinion. And if you were someone who identified, who blatantly identified on the left, I would be asking them the same question. And if they gave me their
Yeah.
answer, that's their answer. I could respect that. So you go ahead. The mic is yours.
All right. Well, so just because of what my background is into coming into comics, where I got interested in comics because they were indie comics, because they were put together by people who just had a passion for it and didn't necessarily have a publisher. Self-publishing was entirely normal. Like, they didn't have 90,000 copies of their issues on the stands,
Right.
and 1,000 stores across America, all this sort of thing. So I don't understand the corporate model, and it's entirely fine for that to exist, but I just don't understand it. So I see this kind of it's like the Comicsgate kind of the fallout of the past couple of years. I see a lot of people getting feeling like things changed without them realizing it, or without their permission, where they just kind of got switched out as a market, and now they've immigrated. They've kind of been kicked out of their homeland, and now they're refugees, and they've come into my homeland now. the indie market. I'm native here. This is my first language, and they're over here learning. Indie market is their second language, and a lot of them kind of wish they could kind of go back, like, and that's fine too. Like they're thinking like, hey, we're hanging out here, but I'm really still kind of waving the flag for the place I came from, and if they let me back in, I'm back in a heartbeat, and that's great. But there's a lot of other people who are saying, you know what, I'm actually gonna start investing here. Like this really is the future for me, for my creative interests, for my family, for my business, all that sort of thing. Like I'm actually better off here than I was back there. And so they're really learning the language, and I'm excited about that in particular, because I don't know, that just kind of jives with my sort of particular philosophy with this. But so I don't get, like, I don't know what people were reading over there where they came from. I'm pretty sure from what the sort of stories they tell me from Spider-Man and Superman, they were really compelling and very relevant moral stories in those. But I guess there were factors of the culture that was being marketed to, and the culture that was pop culture in the 80s and 90s maybe felt a little more cohesive to people, and maybe it had more of a pop appeal, so people didn't feel like talking about the I don't know, crime in the streets and cleaning up the streets was necessarily a divisive sort of story. Stopping bank robbers isn't bad, or I don't know, that sort of thing, or living up to the expectations of your grandfather who raised you and died, and his last wish was that you would, be an example to the city that the city could be proud of. Like, that doesn't sound crazy, because most people were usually on the same page, I guess, culturally, at least in the demographic that was being marketed to with comics. And now everything's kind of a lot more decentralized because of social media, and just, I think there's a lot of reasons why everyone's found a particular niche, and those our cultures in America, at least, are starting to spread out more, and they're having less and less in common with each other. And so I think when people say, that's a long way to say, I think when people are talking about wanting moral messages not in their comics, or wanting it to be, they don't want people to be preaching to them, or they don't want it to be beaten over the head and all these sort of things. I don't even know. I think what they're expressing is that they just want it done. They want moral messages. They just, like all the stories that they read growing up, they just want them to be, they want to be convinced through the narrative. They want to be shown, not told. And that's what they did get from these great, amazing Marvel DC stories. And now, just because of, I think, the corporate structure of these companies now being owned by parent companies that don't really, it makes financial sense for them to not necessarily make a lot of money, but just be kind of IP farms that can be write-offs, that can, that they can pitch to make into TV shows and movies where the real money is. And those tend to have more mass appeal, those those properties, when they're transported to TV and movies. But when it comes to comics, you can just kind of do whatever you want, because the goal is not to make money, but just to keep the licenses active, I think, and to explore sort of things that could be popularized for TV and movies. So that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I love, you can hit me over the head with your story. Like, that's fine. Like, I don't know. That's the comics. I've read stuff where it's kind of, you just turn off your brain, like Asterix, and you just kind of, well, even that, there's Asterix is intensely, like, I don't even understand it anymore because it's way too relevant for the particular time, but they're throwing in politicians and bimbo celebrities and drunk pop music stars into the comic and making fun of them. Like, it's hyper relevant. It's almost too relevant where it doesn't even make sense anymore. But I think all these kind of stories are okay if you can find a market and you can just entertain people with it. And I think the problem right now is that Marvel and DC, they're not in the business of entertaining so much as, I guess, the person they're selling it to is Netflix. It's not you and me.
Right.
So that's really the problem, I think, is that I don't think it's more strongly worded philosophy in comics. And I don't even know what to do with people like legacy readers who had been well taken care of for decades and then are being that Marvel and DC seem to have wanted an upgrade, I guess, or what they perceived to be an upgrade, where they tried to switch to a demographic they thought was healthier and younger and cooler, I guess. I think that's bad. That's real. I don't know. I don't know any way to justify that, but that's that would be an issue. But I think a lot of these people, if they were preached to in a view that they agreed with, they'd be fine with. If just same with me. If you preach to me and I'd just say, I'd say, "Amen, brother." If you're saying what I wanted to hear.
Right.
So I don't know. That's a lot. What do you? I'll throw it back at you. What do you think about this?
I don't like to be preached at as a reader.
Okay. Yeah.
I like my subtleties in stories. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason why I stopped reading Marvel and DC comics, because I started noticing that they were doing that, and I was like, okay, look, I get it. I totally get it. I do.
Mm-hmm.
But why can't you give it to me the way you did before? Meaning, like, well, I guess what's a good example? I can't think of an example at the moment, but
Like, would Watchmen be an example of something that you?
No, Swamp Thing. Let's go back to Swamp Thing. Because I try to collect old back issues. So I go to trade shows and I try to find first print runs of like famous storylines. So I have a nice chunk of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing collected. Now I don't have the whole thing, but I have most of it because luckily I found a few vendors who were just selling them for like $1. So I was like, I grabbed a whole bunch of them and buy them, and now I have them. So I read them, and it is a pro-environmentalist book. Like if you read it, it oozes off the page. But the reason why it worked for me is because Alan Moore he understood. At least this is my interpretation of it anyway. He understood that the story needed to be intact. I still need to entertain the reader. So he still had a lot of the elements of the good guy, bad guy. Good guy, bad guy, beginning, middle, end, and like you mentioned earlier, like you just mentioned right now, is the giving the message of the story through the narrative.
Yeah.
Through the dialogue and the characters, so that way when you get to the end of it, it's satisfactory. It's not shoved down your throat. It's very like I said, satisfactory, not satisfactory, but satisfying. You're like, oh wow, that was really deep. I never really thought of it that way, like that kind of thing. And then he was really good at that. He was really good at forcing you to think about things and not cramming it down your throat.
He would show, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Alan Moore is really good at showing characters, learning things, rather than trying to telling you, the reader, what you should learn. He's showing characters learning, and then you by proxy could learn through that character.
Exactly.
If you want.
He was the master of that, and not just him, but other great writers too. Like Frank Miller was really good at that. For current writers as well, like Mark Millar was. Well, Mark Millar wasn't really. He didn't really master that. He was more comedic, but he still had the elements of. He was having fun, but he still had characters go through stuff and experience things, so that way you, like you said, proverbially can experience it with them. The same thing with another writer I like, Brian Azzarello, was really good at that, and Ed Brubaker is really good at that. And that's what I think is what's missing with a lot of current writers, is that they want to shove it down your throat as opposed to letting the characters experience it, so that way you could experience it with you. That was the problem I had when I first started writing Ghetto Dragon. Was I was shoving it down your throat, and I had to scale it back and go, okay, wait a minute. I have to remind myself that the reader has to experience it with the main character. So fish out of water stories are my favorite. They're my go-to. So whenever I do find a
Yeah.
story that's a fish out of water, I'm all about it, because you get to experience what the main character experiences, and it's fun sometimes. A lot of the time, I should say, not sometimes. And if it's well executed by the writer and the artist, then you have yourself a fantastic piece of work. And so you mentioned Watchmen. Watchmen is another prime example of that. It's a fantastic piece of work. Same thing for V for Vendetta. Same thing with Dark Knight Returns. And most recently, the last book that I really impressed me was Mark Millar's Chosen. I don't know if you ever picked that one up or not.
No.
Yeah, that story is cool because it's about the second coming of Christ, but in modern times.
Ooh.
It's really freaking great. Like I love it, and I always read it every year. I go back and I read it again because it's so good. It's so well written and well done. And so,
oh, cool.
Yeah, so I don't like to be preached, and I think that's the part of the, I guess, the Comicsgate that I identify with the most when I first learned about the the movement, because I had no idea what Comicsgate was when I got back in the game. I was like, what the hell is that? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
So then of course, I did my research and I found out what it was all about, and I saw that it was a bunch of people who really are mad, and to me, it was no different than the readers who I used to overhear at the cons years ago when I used to attend like the San Diego Comic Con or the WonderCon. There were times where like I was by the table with an artist or looking at some artist's work or a writer who's signing their books. Sometimes I overhear some readers like tell them to their face that they fucked up a character they liked. Like you ruined this character, And I remember there was one time, I forget who the writer was, and I was standing there going, "Is this guy for real? Like, is he really freaking tearing this writer a new one just because he changed something of a character that he liked?" And so I kind of figured, okay, Comicsgate, not just Comicsgate, but people who attack the creators is no different than the people who attack the creators at the cons. That's the way I looked at it. But overall, I agreed with the main gripe that they had, which was, we don't want this shoved down our throats.
Yeah.
That it's fine if you want to do that. That's okay. Because when I look back at the Authority, did you ever read The Authority by Warren Ellis and I think Mark Millar took it over after? Did you ever read that series?
No. I know the names, but
well, that series came out in 2000. I want to say 2002, 2003, roughly. The main characters, Apollo and Midnighter, which were a knockoff of Superman and Batman, they were gay lovers.
Yeah.
They were like, they made no bones about it. They didn't hide it. It was straight up in your face. They were gay lovers, and no one had a problem with it. The book sold like hotcakes.
Yeah.
It was one of the most extremely popular non-Justice League books that was being sold at the time through Wildstorm, when Jim Lee still owned Wildstorm before he sold it off to DC. So it was a very high grossing comic book, and the whole argument of like the bigotry or whatever, and it's like, I don't think that's true, because if that was true, the Authority wouldn't have sold the amount of copies that it sold, because of that very element, right? Because it was because it was well written, and on top of that, it was new characters. So they introduced these new characters, and they right off the bat just put it out there. They just put it out there. They didn't hold back, and people flocked to it. I flocked to it. I still have my copies to this day. I still read them over and over again because they're really well done. They're great.
Sure.
Because they're like a hardcore version of the Justice League. So you know how JLA, they have a code of we don't kill. Well, Authority is like, no, we're gonna kill you. Like we're gonna go after you if you're a dictator in some third world country who's oppressing your people. We're gonna go into your country and we're gonna kill you and liberate them. That's what made the book. That's what made the book cool, I guess, in my opinion.
Wow.
Was that. I highly recommend it, by the way. So if you ever get a chance
No, that sounds fun.
Yeah, to purchase The Authority by Warren Ellis, and then the Mark Millar books, you're gonna be thoroughly entertained throughout the whole.
Yeah, I've learned that anything Mark Millar does, like you can. People critique the idea of like just trying to write a script to get it optioned for a film deal.
Right.
I'm okay when Mark Millar does that.
Because
I
he's
can
good.
tell what he's doing.
because he's
that.
great. You know, he
Yeah.
knows exactly.
Those are the movies I want to see. So those are the books I want to read. That's
Yeah,
fine.
exactly. Like Kick-Ass, that was so fast. I remember when they came out, and then like a year later, the movie came out. I was like, wow, holy crap, man, this is
Yeah, that was fast.
good. I was like, good for you, Mark Millar. That's awesome that you got to do that. You got to see Mark Millar he should be everyone's like he should be the beacon of light for all indie creators, because what he did was he left Marvel and said, you know what, there's more money in indie if I just keep control of the books that I create and then sell them off myself. So that's like every indie writer should follow Mark Millar's, path. And I'm not saying you should write for movies. I'm just saying be passionate about your project. If you love your project, if you love your story, and if you're genuinely making comics because you love making comics, then eventually, in my opinion anyway, it will pay off in the end. It will just find its way to the top in some form or fashion. That's why, like I mentioned Jeff Smith earlier, to this day, people still remember Jeff Smith because Bone was such a great book. It's still a great book to this day. Another indie creator that's still around is Terry Moore. And Terry Moore has written great material. I forgot the name of the first book. I want to say Lost Girls, but I don't think it's Lost Girls. But anyway, he's stuck around for so long, but now he's a household name, and he's never worked for Marvel or DC Comics. And the reason why those two indie creators are still revered and remembered is because they are passionate about what they do. Your book, I'm pretty sure it made what it made because you could see it. You could see the passion. You could see the love in the pages, and readers identify with that. At least for me, the way I used to buy new books from new creators when I felt the itch to pick up something new, that's outside what I know. I would look at three things. First, I would look at the cover, and if the cover was good, I pick up the book. And then if I liked the second thing, which was the interior art, if I liked the sequentials, not just the art, but the sequentials, because that's important for me too. Does the flow? Does my eye easily follow the sequentials without having to read the bubbles? So that was the second thing. And if I saw that yes, my eyes did like what I was seeing, I buy the book and then I read the story. And if the story was good, I come back next month to pick up the next issue. So
absolutely.
And I think maybe subconsciously most readers do that. But when I started thinking about breaking down, like how, what does a comic book reader pick up a book? And so, well, I got to look at myself because I know myself better than anyone else, right? So that's how I broke down those three elements that how I pick up a book is those three things: cover, interior art, and then the story gets me to come back.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good rule of thumb, and just I think the cherry on top, or I don't know what the right metaphor would be, but like particularly with crowdfunded stuff, with the online, the marketplace sort of thing that we're swimming in is the personality, I guess. I want to say like the level of integrity that you can kind of glean off of interpersonally, like checking out the live streams and hanging out in the chat, or getting on with them, or following them on Twitter and interacting, like that sort of thing, I think goes a long way. That's not something we used to get in local comic shops, though I guess we got it at conventions, but now we're getting it. We can have a convention every night of the week, which is cool. And so that's a huge, and a lot of people kind of poo-poo on that. And I think that's something, and I think it's cool that people have really embraced. I don't know why anyone like Comicsgate has been able to embrace that. I don't know why everyone else hasn't as well. I think that's dumb, but like I think it's so natural to just.
I think it's because for the most part they're scared.
Yeah.
And I think the major problem that most writers or artists have is not being able to take criticism. Because who wants to hear that, right? Oh, your stuff sucked. I picked up your book and it was terrible. That's like I can imagine it's tough to hear, but I think that kind of stuff makes for personally anyway, it makes artists stronger, because if you could take it, and if the person has valid points, then you could grow from that eventually. But or if you know they're full of it, if you know like you don't know what you're talking about, then you could just shove them. You could just like wave them off like, yeah, whatever. You don't know what you're talking about, dude. Don't buy the next book. It's as simple as that. Don't buy the next book.
Yeah,
but
that's probably what it is. Which is just so sad, because like when it comes down, like I don't know why or how that patterns into politics, and I don't pretend to understand that. But I think you're right. There's like a personality thing where if you're just okay hanging out and you can enjoy the chaos of just kind of floating in the mix of like, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I'm just here to hang out and be myself and hang out with other people being themselves. And you're cool with that. Like you can really thrive, and people get a sense of you real fast of whether or not you're the sort of person they want to give their money to. They feel like they can trust you to, turn around a comic in 6 months and put it in their hands. And people who don't do that, like, I'm just addicted to it now. It's so fun. I think a lot of people, there's probably a few thousand people at least who are addicted to it now, at least in the States, where like, I don't want to just pick something off the shelf with good art and continue spending money on it every month. Like, I want to also know, like, hey, this guy, like, and I don't mean like they're voting the same way as me necessarily, but just that they seem like a cool guy or gal, that I like knowing the person. I think people really dig that. And it's such a natural thing to just say, I'm a human. There's a human behind this who made this. This isn't some nameless, faceless corporate entity that just shows up, proofs on the shelf. Like this is a thing, and now it's something that someone is hand delivering basically over Indiegogo straight to my door. So like that kind of high interpersonal tactile kind of relationship that we get to have with backers now is it's intoxicating. There's nothing like it. Serving people who have that much access to you, it's really fun. I wouldn't want to do anything else. That's why I'm native here. Like this is my land. Anyone can come here.
Yeah,
we got plenty of room. There's no actual limit to how many people who come here. But like,
it's going to get flooded. It's going to get flooded for sure. And
you think?
But you're absolutely right. Like it's almost like it's like Christmas, right? It's like Christmas every year throughout the whole year. You you get a perk from an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you decide. And then you kind of forget about it, and all of a sudden you get a package in the mail, and you open it, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Hey, I got this. Hey, that's right. I packed this like a couple months ago, and I got it. Sweet. It kind of brightens your
party,
day. Yeah. It's like a. So I understand the psychological part of that. It's because I love it. When I order stuff and it gets in the mail and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh cool, I got the stuff that I ordered and I totally forgot about it.
Yeah, and you saw maybe you saw it get made, on streams, or you saw other people get theirs, and you're like, oh man, where's mine? And then you get it, and it's like a celebrity showing up and coming to crash at your place now. It's like, whoa, like I got it. It's here. It's with me. Like that's so cool.
It is cool. It is very cool. And you're right. That's why I had to embrace it. When before back in February, before the COVID thing happened, I launched the campaign and I launched it cold because I didn't do my due diligence. I didn't research. And of course I found out later that having a YouTube channel, having a strong Twitter account or a social media account is the best thing you can do if you're an indie creator, because in that way, when you do launch something, the people who have been following you for a while, they've interacted with you for a while, they know you're cool, they know you're funny, whatever the case may be, they'll more than likely back your campaign because they want to see you succeed. And so I had to, learn. I had to get used to this. I wasn't used to this whole live streaming stuff, and then now I'm getting accustomed to it. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It's I had to get accustomed to it in the beginning. So now I've been more comfortable. So I want to make more streams. I want to make more videos, and that's the reason why I asked you to be on, because I was like, I can't really sit there by myself the whole time talking about comics. It's better if I have someone to bounce off of and interact. And not only that, but also get to know the people behind the Twitter accounts, because that's another reasons why I asked you to be on the show, because I like your Twitter account. I like your feed. It entertains me in a way, because I'm like you. My hobby is history. My hobby is learning about the occult history.
There you go.
And not just that, but also philosophy, Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy, Plato, Aristotle, Rumi, Al-Ghazali. I've studied that on my own as well. So when I saw you, I was like, hey, a brethren. Like, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. He'll know all my references, and I'll know all of his references. So that's why
on that wavelength. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I asked you to be on the show, because I knew that you and I would jive because of maybe not so much of our same backgrounds, in terms of our upbringings, but our interests, because you love comics and you love history and you love learning about that stuff. Same here. The same way. I love history. I love philosophy, and I also dabble in politics from time to time. But of course, right now I don't want to do that, because it's all in a freaking fire right now, in a freaking in a power vacuum. So I don't want to get in. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. But I will touch, philosophy and comics and all that stuff. So that's why, like I said, I had you on the show, so that way we could discuss about topics that most people don't talk about. Because I know a lot of the live streams, which is entertaining, don't get me wrong, but talking about feuds, like for instance, that stream on Monday with Mike Miller and Ethan Van Sciver, although that was entertaining and it was very nail biting, like, oh my god, they're gonna freaking fight on a live stream again, but it was great to see. It was fun to see, not fun, but it was great to see them patch things up. It made for quality entertainment in some like voyeuristic way. They were looking into these personal feelings between two people who were once friends. But although I said, although that's good, I would like if there was other channels that focused on the medium, because I love the medium. The comic book medium is a very underrated medium, because although movies and novels and TV shows are great, with comic books you could do so much more. With comic books you could approach a story in a way that you can't approach it with a movie or a TV show or a novel. And and I think that it's a medium that doesn't get enough respect. It doesn't get enough love here, especially in the States. I know in Europe they revere the medium, and outside,
and in Asia too.
Manga is huge. Manga is like still to this day sells like hotcakes, and that's not because they're oversaturated. It's because Japanese people just appreciate the medium. They just love the medium. And so that's what I wanted to bring. I want to bring that to the table. I want to bring the whole love of the medium to the table, and let readers know, like, hey, yes, I'm writing a comic book about a Bruce Lee, inspired character, and you are, writing a comic that's inspired by Indiana Jones and part of Lord of the Rings, maybe. But I'm using the medium to tell this story, because it's probably the best way I could tell the story, in the way that I know how, the way I love to tell it. And the same thing goes with you, and not just you, but also every other creator that's out there who's producing their own book. And so, so again, I'm going to wrap this up, because I know it's getting that time. We've been over an hour now. But I would like to thank you, man, for coming on the show and talking about this with me. And we'll do this again. We should do this again next time. And I know
I love that. Yeah.
We'll do it again. We'll try to. I'm gonna wait a little bit, and then I'm gonna sign up to the StreamYard thing, where I could have unlimited hours, because I do want to do this more and more often, because I think the more I do this, the more obviously the channel will grow, hopefully. And also, who's your friend, the one that you stream with? I forget his name. You do some streams with him about comics as well. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, you want me to hook you up? Well, he's have I think he's having internet issues, which is one reason why we just kind of dropped off with it. But, all these kind of, like, whenever you commit to co-host on an ongoing basis with someone, like the clock is ticking.
Right. Yeah.
They never
I'm going to do a movie stream with a coworker of mine because he and I are big cinephiles too. So
Oh, cool.
starting December on Friday nights, he and I are going to do a show. The working title right now is talking cinema, but I'm not really sold on the title, but hopefully we'll change it by then. But yeah, every Friday I'm going to do a stream just about movies, and the first topic is going to be underrated directors. And then the week after that, it's going to be overrated directors. So that's going to be that one.
Oh, I love it. Shots fired. That's going to be good.
Shots fired. Exactly. So I'm looking forward to it because he and I, we also mesh well, and we've had not arguments but debates. I've mentioned one director that he really loves as being overrated, and he got really upset about it, and we had a back and forth. And so that gave me the idea. I was like, hey, you know what? We should do this on the live stream. This would be great on the live stream.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll do that. And if are you a cinephile as well? You love movies too?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. You mentioned you worked. Duh. You mentioned that in the beginning of the stream. Duh.
Yeah, I got my favorites. Like I dig deep into a few things.
Okay. Well, the idea right now is it's just obviously he and I are going to be the co-host of the show, and then we might play with the idea of opening up the show for people who want to give their kind of points to our list of underrated and overrated directors.
Yeah.
So just keep an eye out for that, and then whenever we're on, dude, just
sounds good.
Let me know, and I'll help you on, and you could give your 2 cents onto what what director, whatever that we mentioned that you happen to like or don't like. It doesn't really matter. It's gonna be all open. So yeah, man, we'll do this again. We'll do this again soon. Maybe if possible, if you have time, every week or every other week. It depends on your schedule. I do plan on doing this every week, once a week anyway, for the time being. And then hopefully because right now the whole COVID thing is still up in the air. The state I'm in, they're thinking about shutting down, so I'm kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with my work. And if it slows down again, then I might have to wait a little while. But if not, then I'm going to straight up just pull the trigger and get the StreamYard thing for unlimited hours, so that way I could do this as much as I can, so that way I could get more my face out there and the book out there. So I'll keep in touch on Twitter, and I'll let you know if you're interested.
Do.
Yeah, if you're interested, just let me know which days work for you the best and what time. So that way we could develop a schedule and we could be consistent. We could just keep talking about, maybe the next topic will be about the comic book culture and how it's changing, or tips on how to crowdfund, or whatever the case. It doesn't really matter to me. So as long as we get something out, and we could get more people in too. So if you could talk to your friend, because I like your show, I like his show too.
Oh yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, so I watched a few of his streams before. What's his name? I don't know his name. I forget his name.
Oh man,
He wears glasses.
I haven't talked to him in a couple of months. Like I'm trying to. He was having some. I think he kind of got off Twitter.
Guadalupe, buenas. Guadalupe, Matt is she's the colorist of the Ghetto Dragon.
Oh, great, cool.
Congratulations on the milestone.
Yeah, beautiful work.
Yeah, she does. Yeah. She does fantastic work. I really love her colors. Guadalupe is a great person, a talented colorist. She's from Argentina, I think.
Oh, nice.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Guadalupe, if you're not from Argentina, but she's
some of the best stuff comes from South America, honestly. They just blow us out of the water.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally.
Insane.
That whole scene, that whole comic book scene in Argentina, man, is nuts. It's I've seen some very talented people. I'm like, man, if you guys came over here, you guys would be freaking superstars. If you guys came over here and actually, got work here.
Yeah, if I could find a way to just kind of like write scripts and then just get Brazilian and Argentinian people like up through here, like I would do that, and I've been running off because there's so to the end of.
Whoa, you broke up there for a second.
Oh, well, you'd never get to the end of all the talent,
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, so much talent down there right now. I think that's where how kind of like talent pools kind of move around, with time. Mm-hmm. So I think right now it's probably in that area, South America, Argentina, because you could tell they're students of the American comic book game, because they're blowing everyone out of the water right now, in my opinion. Like Thomas
Yeah.
Moria, have you seen that Thomas Moria campaign?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that guy,
it's sick.
that guy's freaking insanely talented. Like, and
I
he's
can't
from,
imagine how long it took just to make all the content he's made so far for this campaign. It looks like
Yeah,
years,
seriously.
but I think he's just got the drive. Somehow
Yeah,
he's
he
figured out
does.
how to do it efficiently.
Yeah, that's going to be the next key. Hopefully, he does get it on time, because I know all that detail takes so much time to do, and hopefully he gets those books out on time. I'm pretty sure he will. But yeah, he's from Brazil, so that's
There you
like
go.
indicative that it's down there. That talent pool that's gonna about to blow and burst. It's down there right now, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So with that said,
Yeah,
man,
more power to him. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So back Thomas Moria. Check out Kiri on. Hold on, let me share my screen again so I can show everyone. It's on in demand, so get your copy if you guys can have extra money to throw to Matt, and also back to Ghetto Dragon. Help me get to 1,000 soon. It's only have 18 days left, guys. 18 days left before the campaign is done, and then it'll go on in demand. And these 2 tiers will go away. Just to FYI, these 2 tiers, the 1-2 punch tier, will not be available on in demand. So if you want the special edition version of the Ghetto Dragon shorts, this is the only time you're going to be able to get it, because after this, no more, no mas. Because again, my own philosophical I guess approach to making comics is, I want to bring back the whole rarity thing in comics. I know that's a little selfish for me to say, to proclaim, but what I love the most about I'll wrap this up after I get this point.
No, this is good.
I growing up collecting comics, I always loved hunting for rare comics. That was one of the most fun things, for me anyway, was collecting hard to find comic books. And I wish the spectator, or not is it the spectator, the speculation market, I wish it didn't blow up like it did, because it kind of oversaturated that. It kind of took the fun away from it. Second and third printings are great. That's fantastic, but I would prefer if it was like, oh, one printing, guys, sorry, this is it. You've lucked out. And if you want this copy, you have to wait until the trade paperback. And I know that's a little selfish of me to say, but that's the one thing I do miss about going to the comic book store, and that is going there. Do you have this issue? Oh no, I sold out, man. I was like, dang. So now I have to find it. I have to go to other comic book shops and hoping that they have it. If they don't have it, then I lucked out, and hopefully down the line I find it in some other shop, or someone gets rid of it or something. I have no idea, but I want to.
And that takes discipline as a creator, I think, because people are going to be DMing you, and saying, "Hey, can you hit me up with another copy?" And to say no to that, even a nice no, like wait till the next campaign. That's tough, but that keeps you moving forward. It keeps you saying, I got to get that next thing out there. I can't just kind of produce one thing and just kind of ride it out. Because people want exciting new stuff, and I guess like when we compete like that, the backer is always going to win, and that's what's exciting about this.
It is. And then if you're lucky, you have yourself a collectible book that people are going to want. And then when you do end up selling it, or if a comic book shop ends up having it, then they could sell it. They could upsell the book and make themselves a little profit for the store, for the company. Because comic book stores, I don't want them to go away. I know the whole talk right now is that they're dying and they're going to go away. But all right, I'm going to stop because I'm going to go on the rant. So,
that's next time right there.
Yeah, we'll save this for the next time for talk about comic book stores, because they are important. They're a staple. So Matt, thank you again for joining me on the show. and we'll definitely do this again because you're fun to talk with.
Yeah, I'd love it.
And I love, like I said, I want to get to know the people behind the Twitter accounts. So I'll have you, and hopefully down the line, I'll have other people who I like their Twitter feeds to come on the show and get to know the person behind the accounts and let people know who they are. So with that, I thank you, and I'll hit you up soon. And with that, so with that said, if you want to say, you have any final words to say before we get off?
No, just thanks everyone for hanging out with us, and appreciate. Hope you had a good Wednesday, and we'll be talking to y'all later.
All right, yeah, same here. Thank you guys for hanging out, and hopefully you join me again and interact with us, guys. Don't be shy. You should have interacted with us. Asked us questions. Maybe I should have said that in the beginning of the show, huh? Then I would have.
We ignored the chat.
Yeah.
Well, no,
so all right, guys.
The chat. You were good.
All right. So it's all right, guys. Good night. You have a good one. Stay safe out there. And happy Thursday for tomorrow, for those who wake up tomorrow. So happy Thursday, and enjoy the rest of the week. You guys take care.